to take just a few minutes and talk about your final project. I know you're well underway, but I do want to make sure that you are clear on the expectations. Now, first of all, the project outline says that you are to design a school-wide implementation plan that could potentially be used to incorporate inclusive practices in the framework of a Catholic school, and that the plan should span 3 years, and that it can be used for your particular school. Now, one of the most important things to remember is what is the mission of your school. As you design your plan, make sure that your mission clearly states that you are a community that wants diversity, a community that welcomes all to the table. Now, again, once you have your mission and your vision, then the plan should flow naturally. What you need to make sure that you have is a statement of anticipated outcomes. What do you want to happen? You need to be incredibly specific and make sure that you explain how your plan is consistent with the ISLLC standards. Now, the idea behind that is to make sure that you know where you're going. If you're going to start an inclusive program and make sure that your school is inclusive, you need to make sure that you know why you're doing it and what are you anticipating in year 1, in year 2, in year 3. You need to design a timeline. What will you be accomplishing on a monthly basis for that 3-year period? You need to make sure that you design some type of a graphic presentation of the activities proposed. You can do that by PowerPoint. You can do it if some of you want to do a video. That's also fine. But the idea is to be able to explain to anyone what you're trying to do. One idea is that if you were going to give this presentation to your faculty, to your parents or prospective parents, what would you say in that presentation, that graphic presentation of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you plan to accomplish those things? That's what the graphic presentation is. It's not simply just putting together a little chart. It's being able to give something to your faculty, to your parents, to your board, to the diocese about what you're trying to do. Now, again, the PowerPoint perhaps could be the easiest, but there are other presentation possibilities. Some of you might be very creative and say, well, I'd like to put together a small brochure. That's also fine. Or maybe I want to put together a small video. That's also fine. The idea is that you should be able to use this at your school in talking to the various constituencies. You also need to make sure, as another part of the project, is that you outline and describe professional development activities for your faculty and staff. Again, faculty and staff. Because one of the things that we've talked about and you've looked at over the course of the semester is, what about the laws? What about accommodations? What about changing the content? What about evaluating students? What do we do? Most teachers really don't know what's going on. You, as the principal of the school, need to make sure that it's very clear to each teacher what they need to do and the professional development activities that you will describe and outline in your plan and in your project here will do that. Now, again, in the outline of the project, I asked you to make sure in your design that you consider the following. What will the school look like next year and over the next 3 years? Why do you believe the changes are necessary? Why change? If your school's a great school, why do you need to do this? Is it important? If so, why? What resources will you need? This is important because this talks about the human resources, the people that you need to carry this out, as well as the capital resources. What additional resources will you need for your teachers to help them do the best that they can to help your students achieve success? Make sure that you factor that in. What will this cost? And where will you get the money? Will you go for a grant? Will you ask the board to raise tuition? Will you do a special fundraiser? How will you raise the money for it? That's an important part of your plan. Who's going to be involved in the change process? We talked about shared leadership early on in the course. How are you going to share the leadership? If you simply sit in the top position in your school, sit in your office, and simply bark out orders to your faculty and staff, are you really going to be successful? That's what you need to make sure that you look at. How are you sharing the leadership? Who's involved? What's their role? Is it clear, their role? Will you need additional staffing? How will you monitor the success and the failures of the program each year? So often, and we've talked about this before, so often we forget about evaluating programs. We start them and then we just start rolling, and then we forget to stop, take a breath, and reflect on what's going on day to day, evaluating the success of the program and the failures. Every program will have some type of failure. The question is, will you learn from that? Will you clearly identify the failure and why there was a failure? Who's going to do the monitoring? Will you do it from on high? Will you ask for a committee? And then how is your plan consistent with the federal and state regulations regarding students with disabilities? You've read about students who are in private schools, what can and cannot be offered. That's what you need to make sure that you do. Now, as you go through your final project here, it should be a culmination of all the things that you've talked about with your colleagues over the last semester, as well as those things that you've seen, heard, and read. This is the opportunity to put together a plan for your school. How can you make your school an inclusive school? We've talked about that from the beginning of the course. And you've seen videos of the impact on the students. That's what we're trying to do. In our Catholic schools, we are trying to make sure that we are inclusive. How will you make your school an inclusive environment? How will you make sure that your curriculum is consistent for all students at all grade levels? It is a challenge, but I know that you as a leader of your school have the potential to make this an incredibly successful exercise that will benefit not just you and your leadership role, but more importantly, helping your teachers and your students fulfill the mission that your school set out. And they will then take your vision of this inclusive school and make it a reality. I appreciate your thoughts. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, either by phone or by email. I appreciate all the work that you've done this semester. Again, good luck. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks. Have a good day.